Hey folks, welcome. I am Spencer Keck with the Hillbilly Think Tank, and I am coming at you live from here in Tunnel Hills, where I am running for Magistrate, District 3, Hardin County. Welcome to the show. Now, y'all, this is the Hillbilly Think Tank. I am the educated hillbilly. No, it's not an oxymoron. Don't call me a moron. There have been educated, emancipated, and erudite hillbillies in Kentucky ever since my kin came through the Cumberland Gap with Daniel Boone. Now, y'all, I am a combat veteran. I've worn the uniform of this country, done many tours overseas, and I came home to serve Hardin County in a different way as a public school teacher. Now, after doing that for a couple of years, I decided to run for magistrate in order not to have a conflict of interest. I now teach in Jefferson County. I'm still living here and, doing all my rest of my life here in Hardin County. I'm running for office because I still, when I talk about sacrifice, about duty, what it means to put your country before yourself, and just not reading from some talking points memo. That's me when it comes to running for office. So I need to talk to you today about something that's hitting every single family here in Hardin County and hitting us hard. It's our wallet. At the grocery store, at the gas pump, on the farm, and in our schools. And I'm talking about Trump's war in Iran and what it's costing the people of Hardin County, Kentucky, every single day. Now, let me set the scene for you. On February 28th of this year, the United States and Israel launched nearly 900 airstrikes on Iran in the opening 12 hours alone. Iran shut down the Strait of Hormuz, which is that narrow waterway in the Persian Gulf through which 20% of the world's oil, comes sailing through there every single day. It did, of course, before this started. Now, experts at the International Energy Association called it the greatest global energy security challenge in history. That's not hyperbole. That's a direct quote. Now, you might be asking, what does a war all the way over there in the Middle East have to do with Radcliffe, with Elizabethtown, with Colesburg, with Younger's Creek, with the farms and families of Hardin County, Kentucky? Well, let me tell you exactly what it has to do with us.
Regret your vote right now?
Well, between him and her, I thought he was the better choice, but honestly, I miss my Uncle Joe. I was a nobody, and I was balling then. Now, I couldn't even tell you. I couldn't even show you $5 in my pocket.
We spoke to Trump voters here in Florida who are ticked off about the fact that the gas prices in the state have gone up by an average of about 60 cents within just a week.
I would just wish he'd keep up on his campaign promise and say he was going to put it under $3. He'd end that war so fast. But here it is, 5 years later, helping his buddy out get his more money. And then never mind charging us Americans all sorts of money for fuel that you just stole from Venezuela.
And those gas prices are getting higher because of volatile oil prices due to the war in Iran, a war that these Trump voters tell us they hope wraps up quickly.
If I could, speak to the president, I just encourage him to finish up this war and get us back to a safe world.
He's saying about for our safety, leave somebody alone, they won't bother you. Hopefully this conflict over there will end, it's just unfortunate.
The overall vibe here at the gas pump amongst these Trump voters is they feel like the economy is not going well right now.
At the moment, I'm really out of work.
My hope is that it's temporary and it doesn't last for too long, that oil prices come back down. That's my hope.
Do you regret your...
Well, of course, hope's a grand thing, but we need real action, not just hope. So, you know, with gas rising more, than it ever has, let's look at the obvious places. This gas station is where we are hit hard. Gas prices in Kentucky have risen more than $1.45 a gallon since this war began. That's a 55% increase, one of the worst surges in the entire country. As of this week, gas nationally is well over $4 a gallon, the highest we've seen it in 4 years. For a lot of us, that's not just an inconvenience, that's a crisis. Think about the working people of Hardin County, the folks commuting to Fort Knox, to hopefully the Ford battery plant in Glendale when it opens back up, because we know the governor announced that Ford is putting in $2 million now to open that back up. And they're supposedly going to bring in 2,100 employees. So they're going to have to commute there to that plant. We've got the Elizabethtown Community and Technical College that students and instructors, teachers have to drive to across the county, if they're going to work as a second job, many people. So most of us, we don't have the option here at all of taking the subway. We have to drive, we have to commute, and we need to do it affordably. We can't take this much longer. Our pocketbooks are already burning holes in them. So since we don't have that public transportation option right now, again, we have to drive and we have to drive. So a new analysis by the Kentucky Center for Economic Policy found that this war is now costing Kentucky drivers $175 million every single month. That's an extra $46 in change for every driver in this state every single month. And rural Kentuckians, we're going to bear the heaviest burden, because unlike people in urban areas, we don't get to choose whether we use our car. We've got to drive. And that money doesn't just disappear into the ether. It comes out of grocery budgets, comes out of school supply budgets. It comes out of savings account that weren't very full before this all started anyway. Now, we know that there is another group that, in addition to having to drive their cars, they've got to drive some really important implements in this county that we can't do without, and we will not do without.
That it is concerning if a trade deal does not get done with China. But we have to work on the rest of the world's economy and the trade that we're doing there to get some of this out of the marketplace.
Well, in Lancaster, Kentucky today, south of Lexington, the state's top agriculture official says Kentucky farmers are feeling the pinch amid the trade war with China. The Chinese have largely stopped buying American soybeans, leaving Kentucky farmers scrambling to find other buyers. Well, Republican Jonathan Schell says he is working with the Trump administration in.
Now, why did I play this one? Well, it is about 6 months ago. Well, it's because Jonathan Schell failed, and those soybean crops that were usually bought by Canada and China, they just went to waste. That's a lot of Kentucky money, Kentucky blood, sweat, and tears down the drain. Now here we are hitting us with the horrific cost of diesel fuel. So what's that doing to our farmers? Well, I've been talking to them ever since this started, and they're feeling squeezed in every direction. Farm diesel fuel is up 46% since this war started. 46%. If you're a farmer ordering fuel by the semi-load, as they do, that's 18,000 gallons at a time. That's an extra $1,000 per delivery on a single load. Fertilizer is that other gut punch. About 1/3 of the world's fertilizer supply travels through that Strait of Hormuz, the same waterway that Iran shut down when we started bombing right before the planting season. So fuel accounts for up to 80% of fertilizer production costs, and those costs are being passed straight down to the people growing our food. Kentucky farmers have already been operating on razor thin margins for 4 straight years of negative returns. Now, one Kentucky farmer has put it plainly. This is really bad timing for the U.S. farmer. We're entering our 4th year of negative returns on profit, their profits right there at the farm level. So the Kentucky Farm Bureau says the pain of this war is being deferred to next year's planting season because many farmers locked in their 2026 fertilizer prices since before the war started. But a lot of folks here in Hardin County did not. And that's the scary time that we're going through right now. So, when we think about an extra $1,000 per diesel load, man, we're talking, 2 truck payments. We're talking about food that these farmers still have to buy. They're not growing all their own food. So we're really pinching everyone, hitting everyone in the gut. And this gut punch is affecting us through and through. So, we're thinking about these people that are growing our food, and we're seeing so many farms going bankrupt. And this is something that we don't want. We don't want our already struggling rural communities having to feel more and more and more of their life's blood just being swept away by these tariffs and then now by the cost of fuel and fertilizer. This cannot stand. We cannot abide this. So 2027, it's going to be even worse because the cost of fertilizer won't be locked in and the bill is going to be coming due. One economist at the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities warned that prices won't come back down quickly. Energy infrastructure in the region has been damaged, and once prices spike like this, it can take years to get back to normal. So he also noted that once the conflict ends, Iran could start charging tolls for the Strait access, and they're already doing that, meaning the cost to American farmers may never fully come back down to where it should be. Well, it's a Band-Aid, said one multi-generational Kentucky farmer when he looked at the federal relief packages. It's nowhere near the fix. Of course, he's right. The people of Hardin County deserve more than a Band-Aid from their elected officials. So now we've got so many great groups of people living in this state, and we're all feeling it, just some of us, of course, feeling it a little bit differently. And we know we've got a very large military population here in our area due to Fort Knox, due to all the veterans that are here, including myself. And, this is just something that we're really feeling here in this community. So I won't beleaguer us with that whole segment, but after Whiskey Pete Kegg's breath gathered every single one of the top brass in Quantico to give them a B rating, a tongue lashing, and talk a bunch of hogwash, the military had enough, had seen enough. And really good leaders saw the writing on the wall and they started retiring. So, what does that mean? What do we have left? We've got a lot of yes men left. We have people that are there because, they will do anything, lick any boot in order to now fill those vacancies. They're not going to tell Whiskey Pete Kegg's breath the truth. They're not going to tell the president the truth when we go on missions. And what have we seen? We've seen cover-up stories for an obvious failed Delta mission meant to go capture the uranium in Iran. They made a cover story for it, came up with that BS about a pilot being rescued, and yet we've never seen that pilot. And we know that those people are propaganda lovers. We would still be seeing that pilot and his crying family on every single news segment that's been run on, the propaganda news networks if it were real. It wasn't real. We would have seen the crying family going to greet the pilot if it were real. It wasn't real. Delta Force is not CSAR. They're not the search and rescue guys at all. There are units highly equipped and highly capable to do that in every single branch in the Navy, in the Air Force, in the Army, and it's not Delta. So that was a whole gaslighting of all of America. And what did they have? They had generals willing to go along with it. General Kane went right along with that gaslighting of all of us. He should be ashamed. And so, I want to speak directly to the veterans and the military families that, are feeling this pinch at the gas pump. We know that this is not normal. It's not the way things should be for this county, for our military, and for our veterans. Because Hardin County is Fort Knox country. This installation contributes $1 billion in annual payroll to our regional economy. It employs more people than the next 5 largest employers in the surrounding counties combined. This is our economic backbone. And right now, our military families, the ones living in Radcliffe and Vine Grove and Elizabethtown and all around, they're shopping at the commissary, sending their kids to Hardin County schools, and they're getting hit just like everyone else at the gas pump and the grocery store. And a lot of them don't shop at the commissary because they don't live on base. Some people live on base, quite a few do, but quite a few don't. So they're at your Kroger, they're at all the other stores like Aldi, Walmart, and the rest, using their money out here. So they're feeling it. Now, as a combat vet myself, let me just say this plainly. I support our troops with every fiber of my being and my soul. But supporting our troops does not mean blindly supporting every war decision made by politicians sitting safely in Washington, D.C. When you send men and women into harm's way, you better have a plan. You better understand the consequences, not just for the battlefield, but for the families back home. Now, Energy Secretary Wright stood on national television in early March and told Americans that this would last weeks, not months. It has now been over 60 days with no end in sight. And as a veteran, I know what it means when leaders don't plan for the full cost of their decisions. We call that poor mission planning. And the people of Hardin County and the families of Hardin County and the families of Fort Knox, the veterans who've already given enough, they are paying for that poor planning right now every time they fill up their gas tank. Now, consumer sentiment is at a record low, worse than during 9/11, worse than during the 2008 financial crisis, even worse than COVID. That's not a political talking point. That's just a reality point. That's the University of Michigan survey going all the way back to the 1950s up to now. So, what do we do when we have leaders that are so grossly negligent? What is it that we should be doing in order to not let down our veterans, our farmers, and all of our citizens here in this county? Because, we know that teachers are feeling this crunch. Teachers, they already don't get paid enough in this state. We rank near the bottom of the barrel when it comes to teacher pay in this state. So what is it that can be done to actually make life better and the rest of our educational community? What is it that you expect of teachers? And do you really think that they can do it with the way they're paid, the way they're disrespected? That's my big question for all of us.
Leaders are reacting to the Department of Education shutdown. Leaders at the National Education Association are taking a stance against the recent cuts. But President Donald Trump maintains programs like Title I and disability services will be preserved. WHAS 11's Alexander.
Well, that's a lie. I'm telling you straight up, as a classroom teacher, we are cutting our ECE, that's Exceptional Child Education programs. We're having to shuffle teachers into other places to teach that are not special ed. We're letting down a vulnerable section of our state. And this state says, united we stand, divided we fall. Yet we're dividing ourselves from some of God's most vulnerable children. This should be something that we all would sleep uneasy over tonight.
Andrew Goldberg and photojournalist Jessica Farley have the details.
It's almost deja vu, to be quite honest.
President of the Kentucky Education Association, Eddie Campbell, says Kentucky has already had a front row seat to the question of funding and public education when Amendment 2 was rejected by voters on Election Day.
They said in a loud and clear voice, we want our public schools to be supported. We want our public schools to be funded. We want to make sure that our students here in the state of Kentucky have every opportunity possible.
Now, members of the National Education Association say funding in public schools is again a battle they're fighting after President Donald Trump's directive to shut down the Federal Department of Education.
Today, we take a very historic action that was 45 years in the making.
Trump signing the executive order on Thursday afternoon.
Pell Grants, Title I funding, resources for children with disabilities and special needs will be preserved.
President Trump on his...
Again, just a bald-faced lie. And, when I decided to make a transition from federal service, it was after I retired from the military, I went to work for the VA, Department of Homeland Security for a little bit, back to the VA. Then I was like, man, there's something deeply missing from my life. I wanted to really give back in even a deeper, more meaningful way. And so I decided the way to do that was to become a teacher and to come back to my beloved old Kentucky home. And I have not found anything as fulfilling as being a teacher, except for my time in the hospital corps, the Navy, where I took care of, Navy sailors, Marines in combat, and all branches of the military, and even their dependents. But teaching gives me just as much, if not even more, complete satisfaction. And I really feel and know that I'm doing something for the community as I teach. And this is a travesty.
promised that key programs won't fade away.
They're going to be preserved in full and redistributed to various other agencies and departments.
National
They were
Education
not.
Association
They were
Secretary
not.
and Treasurer Noel Candelaria.
Make no mistake. I mean, this is the beginning of the dismantling of education in this country and public education as we know it.
But Kentucky Senator Lindsey Titchener of Henry County says the department is too expensive and too ineffective.
So, again, you don't fund education as it should be. Of course, it's going to be called ineffective. But too expensive? Education is where we produce our future doctors, lawyers, engineers, teachers, carpenters, welders. It's too expensive to make sure that we're educated as well as all of, if not more, highly educated than our competing first world nations. Because we're at the bottom of the list of that. This is just an absolute travesty, and to see Titchener sit there and act like it's anything else. But when she knows full well her kids are going to go to private school, and the millionaires and the billionaires know full well their kids are going to go to private school, they're going to go to the elite colleges, and they're just going to look down on the rest of us for the rest of their life and tell us it's our fault for being improperly educated or not educated enough. And this is, again, complete hogwash. I would use worse terminology, but Casper might be offended. Right, Casper? Yeah. Don't want to offend Casper. So, all right. Again, like I said, as a public school teacher, this is where it gets personal for me in a completely different way. The economic pressure on working families always shows up in our schools because our schools are the heartbeat of the community. When our community hurts, our schools feel it. And when our schools suffer, our kids suffer. So, all right, guys, let me take a quick look. I see we've got about 16 comments on here. I don't want to neglect anybody. So we've got Tom on here. Tom, as always, thank you. Welcome. Tom says, I was paying less than $2.50 a gallon for gas in February. The cheap places are showing $4.50 now. Tom lives over in Jefferson County, I believe. And No says, Trump is going to fix it all. I don't know if that was sarcastic or truthful. Tom, the U.S., with the help from General Motors, decided that everyone would drive a single occupant vehicle everywhere instead of public transit. That was in the 1940s. And yes, sadly, that is true. And we all bought into it, lock, stock, and barrel. Kelly Gibson says, and here we are. Yep, absolutely. Scared of Werewolves says, good thing we have a stable genius in the White House. Yeah, absolutely, they're scared of werewolves. I agree. Tom thinks that's hilarious. All right, Howie Do says, my brother's in Fort Knox right now. Well, thank him for his service. I appreciate what he does. Todd Steiner says, buy shell gas. It's a conspiracy. And Todd Stein says, does he know where the gold is? So, all right. Tom, back on again. Tom says, speaking of gas, there's a push for folks to buy 87% octane, 15% ethanol. It's bad for a lot of cars and really bad for small engines. Avoid it. Yeah, years ago when I still had a gasoline using vehicle, I made sure to buy one that was highly suited for 15%, but those are few and far between. All right, Todd Steiner. Yeah, we're all getting hit with these high prices on everything, and utilities are going up. What the hell is up with that? Absolutely. Utilities are another deal. It's absolutely. Todd Wilkins says, screw that. What happened to the lottery supporting the schools? Yeah, so the lottery really is supporting big time students that get C's and above. They get money when they go to college from the lottery. It's really what mostly the lottery does, which is a good thing, but it's not the end all be all. Tom says fuel costs more, so getting stuff to the store is more expensive. Kroger isn't going to eat that extra cost. No, they're not. Todd says senior citizens shouldn't have to pay property taxes. Now, here in Kentucky, they can get an exemption from property taxes, and they do. It's called the Homestead Act. Todd says $28 a pound for beef. Yeah. Again, I'm starting to buy local anyway when it comes to beef. I'm going and pork and everything. I'm going to the farmer's market. And I've also found a farmer, actually happens to be my pastor, and I'm going to buy a whole steer and share it with another coworker. We're going to split it in half for both families. John says, thanks, Todd W. All right. Johnny says, we got Johnny Cadle says, public schools are the literal barometer of the state, of the local, state, and national picture. Yes, they are. I mean, I see it every day in the classroom myself. Tom says some senior citizens qualify for something called the homestead exemption. Yeah, that's what I was saying. That's right. 65 plus in age, check for qualifications. That's right. And here in the state, 100% disabled vets also get a tax break on property taxes, not the full 100% that the elderly do. And that's okay. All right. And Justice for Metcalf says the gas prices won't go down even at E15, and they will never lower it back below down to E10. All right. All right. So far, so good. All right. So now let's talk about what this means for all of Hardin County. This can, of course, go to just about any county in the state. So here's the big picture, and I want you to hear it clearly. I'll try not to stutter. Economists are projecting that even if this war ends tomorrow, Americans are going to feel the financial sting for months and years, more than likely. Mark Zandi, the chief economist at Moody's Analytics, said the damage has already been done in part because there's no way to go back on oil prices, at least not anytime in the near future. Inflation is already at its highest level in nearly 2 years, even further back than that. Forecasters say a key inflation gauge hit 4% by the end of this year, double the Federal Reserve's targets. The 30-year mortgage rate jumped in March. Interest rates are volatile. The uncertainty alone is crippling small businesses and farm operations that need to make long-term plans. Now, y'all, I remember because my wife was buying a house right after the election, if I remember correctly. And people told her, oh, it's going to be great. Or she was looking right before and bought right after. They were like, oh, it's going to be great. This president's going to bring down the interest rates with all the things he's going to do. Nope. And I just want to make it clear, for years, we've acted like the president of the past, the presidents of the past had a lot to do with oil prices. They didn't for a long time. Not even Carter could control OPEC. Reagan didn't have any control. Go on down the line. Bush didn't have any control of it. Look at, our next president, Clinton. He didn't really have control over it. The next Bush didn't have control over it all. I'd love to blame him when the prices went way up. Next with Obama, he didn't have control over oil prices. We all like to try to act like the president is to blame or the one to cheer on when the prices are either like we like them or not like, we're not like we like them. But when we got to this president, we actually have a president who did affect the oil prices. This war completely affected the war. The war caused the gas prices to go up. This closing down the Strait of Hormuz is the first time in our history that I can actually say this is thanks to Trump. There's no way around it. And his piss poor planning is to blame for this. There's no way around it. He tried to gaslight us about the prices of gas even before the war. When it was $2.50, $3, he was claiming it was 99 cents on the news live when it wasn't. Of course, does he ever go to a pump? No. So here's what makes me angry as someone who loves, and when I say love, I'm in love with Hardin County. This wasn't inevitable. This was a choice. The Trump administration chose to launch the war while negotiations were still happening. They launched it without securing the Strait of Hormuz. Remember, we pulled a Japan attack on them, as he said when the Japanese premier was in his office. We were pretending to negotiate with Iran, all the while planning on attacking them during negotiations. Talk about some skullduggery. So this didn't have to happen. And then it didn't secure the Strait of Hormuz when they started these attacks. Piss poor planning. Piss poor planning. And they told us it would be over in weeks. What do we have? Sailors and Marines starving on the ship as they're scraping the bottom of the barrel, the food supply, as I showed you last night. 60 plus days later, the people of Hardin County are still paying the price. So let's take a little moment and, think about it. Calm down a little bit. I need to, I know. Take a little break, see if I got any more comments I need to go over. I'll look at them while we look at some cute pictures or, something. I'll try to find something funny. What they were when Biden was in power. Not in the least. So as he left office, they were not this expensive at all, and they hadn't been this expensive for quite some time. As Crazy Canuck says, Trump effed his base. Absolutely effed his base, and that's so true. So sadly true. Tom just sent me a dog picture. All right. I'll have to check them out. All right, y'all. So as I said before, I am running for Hardin County Magistrate here in District 3 because I believe local government matters. I believe that the people who represent this community, they should understand what it's actually like to live here, to drive these roads, to teach these kids, to put on the uniform, to plant the fields. I can't stop a war from Washington, but I can fight for the people of the district at every level of government. I can make sure Hardin County's voice is heard, and I can push back when decisions made by powerful people in distant places come crashing down on working families right here. We deserve leadership that tells us the truth about the cost of war, about the cost of living, and about what our families are really going through. I am Spencer Keck. I am a combat veteran. I'm a public school teacher, and I'm asking for your vote in Hardin County's Magistrate District 3 for our farmers, for our teachers, for our kids, for our veterans, for our active duty, for our military families. Please like and subscribe to this channel. And y'all, let's remember that we are our brother's keeper. We are our sister's keeper. And as we remember that, we know then we'll live up to Kentucky's motto, united we stand, divided we fall. So, one quick last check. Tom says, YouTube tells me that 21 people are watching. A few more should click the like button. Thank you there, Tom. Yes, please, y'all, click the like and subscribe button if you haven't already. Working Bum says 8647 and 86 MAGA. All right. Tom Armstrong says, yep. Y'all, again, let's remember everyone deployed overseas right now. Let's honor them, remember them, and bless our corazon. Have a great week and have a great rest of this evening. And Marcus says Hardin County is beautiful. The recovery community there has helped me be the man I am today. All right. God bless the Rosenwald Life Center. Awesome, awesome. Before my dad passed away, Kentucky gave him 30 years of sobriety thanks to Alcoholics Anonymous. So, Marcus, I'm so proud of you. Keep up that great work. And let's, guys, keep your powder dry and, your puppy's happy because it is going to be something we're all going to get together, get through together, that is, and we're going to bless one another as we do so.
Grandfather didn't go south because they were